So before we get started, we're going to go ahead and just do some introductions. So if you could, I guess we'll just sort of, we'll start introducing ourselves from the HMIS team, and then we'll ask you each to introduce yourself, what your role is, and what agency you're with. It would be really helpful. So I'll go first since I'm already unmuted. I'm Jennifer Barrera. I am the program manager for HMIS, and I work for the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless. And I'll jump down to Maria.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Vargas. I am the HMIS Assistant Admin here at the Coalition.
And I'm Tucker Morgan, and I'm the HMIS Analyst here at the Coalition.
PJ, could you go next?
And I'm Dottie, the Director of Emmanuel House with the Catholic Diocese of Providence, and the only HMIS person right now.
All right.
Hi, I'm PJ. I'm the Outreach Program Coordinator at RIHMIS House. I'm also going to be staff at the Winter Shelter.
Hi.
Hi, Adrienne. Do you want to unmute and tell us what you do at RIHMIS House?
Yes. Can you see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Agent Taylor. I work at RIHMIS House. I've been here for a good long time. I am the program coordinator for our Phase 2 Living program. That's after they graduate and all. And I house them. Also, I am the supervisor along with Jill Van Leesen for the Winter Shelter.
Okay, thanks, Adrienne. Let's see, who else is here? Jocelyn.
Hi, I'm sorry I entered late. What do you want to know?
Your name, position, and agency.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Hernandez from RIHMIS House. I am the program director for the Mother-Child Reunification Program and also the HMIS administrator.
All right, thank you. I'm just going in order that my people show up on my screen, so nobody take offense. Next is Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Harris. I work here at the RIHMIS House, case manager for the Women's 90-Day Program.
Great, thanks. All right, and who else is here? I don't know your name. It shows up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Don Diallo. I'm the men's program coordinator at the RIHMIS House.
All right, hi, Dondi.
Hello.
All right, I think that's it. Dottie, you are in here sort of twice. I think one maybe for camera and one for sound, but all right, we'll go ahead and get started. Because this is a small group, the intent is to really get you guys rolling for your, no pun intended, for your enrollment, for your winter shelter programs. So it will be sort of interactive. So we will, just for sound quality, ask you to mute while we're presenting. But if you have any questions, please go ahead and unmute, ask your questions. The whole intent of this hour is that we get you all the information you need to successfully enter data for your programs. And then we've all introduced each other, so we don't really have to, if you do ask a question, you don't really have to introduce yourself before your question. And then if we slide to the next screen. So this, the slides that we're basing this training off of are our emergency shelter training, but we really want to just make sure that we are helping you prepare for this winter shelter season and the winter shelter programs that you have. So we're going to gear the presentation towards that. And of course, all of your questions, our goal is to make sure that we answer them. So without further ado, we'll get started. Okay, so, sorry, I'm having trouble seeing my screen here. The first thing is, I want to make sure everyone has had an opportunity to to work in Clarity. So is there anyone who's here who has not actually been entering data into Clarity so far?
I haven't.
Okay, all right. So this is a refresher for most, but for you, Adrian, it will just be obviously, you know, just new. But as a reminder, when you first log into Clarity, this is the screen that you will land on. So you will land on what we're calling the search page. The screen that you see, you will enter in, oh my goodness. Sorry. You could enter into that search bar there, the first three initials of a client's first name, last name, or any of their other information, such as their service point ID, or if you know their Clarity ID, you could enter that into search. But the other important things to see on this page are the initials, the RT that you're seeing here, that is your account settings. So your initials would be present there. If you were to click on that, you would be able to get into your account settings. Also next to it, you will see your agency. If you are someone who's trained in the coordinated entry, diversion and triage assessment, you also will have the availability to enter data as the agency named coordinated entry. So many of you here will probably have the option of entering data as your agency or coordinated entry agency.
Jen.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get like a list of individuals who have been trained at Amos House?
Yeah.
Actually, Jocelyn, the only one that's been trained there is Adrian.
Is Adrian?
Yes.
Okay, so anyone who needs, so the VIs for that, is that in the coordinated entry then?
Correct.
Correct. So anyone who needs to do a VI, they need to get trained on coordinated entry.
I did the coordinated entry training also.
Let me double check that.
Okay.
I believe you. I don't know if I have you on my list. Give me one. I can check right now.
All right. And then if individuals haven't been trained, are you able to send me an email on how we could get trained?
I actually did mine with Adrian. Remember, Adrian, we did it at Crossroads in the basement with the gentleman.
So you just did yours with, was I there, PJ?
No, it was a small group. It was the gentleman from Crossroads that kind of does this for that training, I think. And he did it with us. This was probably like when coordinated entry first was kind of opening. It was months. It was prior to COVID. We actually did it in person at Crossroads.
So it was a SPDAT training combined with the CES diversion training?
Nope, it was just CES diversion. I did SPDAT training separately.
Got it. Okay, that's probably why you're not on my list, but we'll talk after.
Okay.
There was one other question that someone had. So, the question was, can we send you a list of other trainings? So we have been asking Crossroads for a list of upcoming CES trainings, and we've not gotten one yet. So as soon as we learn of additional coordinated entry trainings that are scheduled, we'll blast it out to all the agency managers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so number 2, there's your agency. The little envelope there is messaging. This is really important for you guys. If you were to go and enroll someone in your winter shelter and you see that they have an active enrollment in another shelter, you should be messaging with whoever the case manager is from the other shelter to notify them, because you likely won't be able to create another enrollment for someone and if they're already enrolled in another program. Then lastly, it's not last actually, but the next thing here is the little launch pad. Someone had once said it looks like a waffle, but that if you were to click on that, that gives you some options for reporting. So we'll get to that in the next slide. And then next to that little waffle, there's another little icon there. That's a report queue. So if you're someone who's running reports, likely Jocelyn, or we're actually going to talk about some reports at the end of this training. Once you run the report, that little red circle says 0. So we had 0 reports that had been run. If you run reports, the number of reports that are ready for you to review show up in that little red circle. All right, if we go to the next slide, this is more information about this first page that you land on. So here below where your agency name is, you will see the word caseload. If you are a program manager, you likely wouldn't have your own caseload, but you would be wanting to make sure that anyone who's a direct case manager assigns themselves at the point of enrollment or after enrollment to the client. So someone could be enrolled in your winter shelter program and have a case manager. I'll just use the example of Adrian. You could be assigned as someone's case manager for winter shelter. They could also be working with Better Lives Rhode Island for some street outreach and be assigned Paula Hudson. And they could also be, you know, working with Crossroads for some diversion, or probably not, but some other program that's not shelter. And they could have a case manager assigned there as well. So people could have multiple case managers assigned. Right here, we did talk about the search bar here. You can type in a client's full name, but what is recommended by Clarity is that you put the first 3 initials of their first name, first 3 of last name. You could also use their service point. HMIS ID that we just left, the system we just left. I know some people's records still have that ID. We did include that in this Clarity as one of their alias elements. So you can search for them by that. And then over here to the right-hand side, any of your recent searches will come up. All right. So here, this is really important for you all to just remember that there's 2 sort of levels of tabs, so to speak. So here what we're seeing is the client profile level. So this is the profile, the history, programs tab, notes, files, contact location. All of those are related to the client. So they're not notes that are related to a program enrollment. So these are visible by, based on sharing settings for most, actually all users in HMIS. They'll be able to go into the client profile. They'll be able to look at the history. So that would include enrollments and services. Here, you could click on programs, and that's where you could view programs that people are actively or recently enrolled in, as well as programs that are available from your agency to enroll them in. And we'll talk about that a bit later. Here's where you could attach notes that you would want the whole system to see, not necessarily a case note related to your enrollment in a shelter, but if there's some piece of information that you want all HMIS users to know, this is where you would write that note. Here's where you could attach some files, but again, we're recommending that you attach them at the program level. Contact information and location are right here, and we'll keep going. We'll talk about them a little bit more. So once you click on the client level tab marked labeled program, it brings you to this level. So this level of tabs that it's outlined in the red box, will show up next after you click programs. This is where you can enroll someone in your program. You can also view the history. You can provide services. So all of you winter shelter providers, if you provide a meal, or if you provide toiletries, this is where you would be able to provide that. There's another way to provide groups with meals or toiletries through an attendance method, but for now, we're just navigating through this tab level. Here's where the assessments live. And then you could also write a note. This is where you would write a note that you only want people from your agency to see. So if you're dealing with someone who's, struggling with substance use and you had a conversation with them about, sort of pre-contemplative about entering a recovery program, you wouldn't necessarily want to attach that at the client level where every agency would be able to go in and look, but rather you want to attach that at your program enrollment level. And then again, files. So you want to attach any files for your client. Sort of best practice would be to attach those files at the program level. All right, next up. All right, we're going to go through enrollment. Maria, do you want to walk through the enrollment piece?
Sure, I can do that. So like Jen said before, if you go to the program tab in the previous page in that thing, you're going to be able to see all, thank you. So once you click on the program, see how it's bolded? Once you click on that, you'll be able to see all of the available programs within your agency. So on that drop down, all of your programs, you'll be able to enroll them within those. So when you select that caret, you'll be able to see all of the people also enrolled within within that household. They'll be there. So instead of clicking those checkbox like we used to do in Service Point, you'll have the toggle buttons, the blue toggles. So once they're blue, that means they're added to the enrollment. And if you go down to the bottom, that enrollment button is there. So that's where you want to go ahead and click them to actually enroll them into the program. So if you go to the next slide, the shelters will display their current availability for that program. So you have one available client and how much of the occupancy they have available. So again, in an entry exit shelter, you're going to need to exit the clients who have left. However, in a night by night shelter, depending on how your program is set up, they're going to be the beds that are available. So if you go on over to the next slide, this is what your enrollment screen is going to look like. So after you click that enroll button, this is going to be your new screen. So you want to do your project start date for when you guys are entering your clients in. Again, after you click the enrollment, you're going to need to enter the start date and the prior living situation. So those two are the things that you guys want to make sure that you update. And then again, on that right side of the screen, you're going to be able to see all of the household members that you were that you toggled on into the enrollment when on that program screen that we had gone over before. Do you guys have any questions on that? No questions? Okay. If you go to the next screen, sorry for the noise behind me. But so this is the continuation of the enrollment form. So again, you want to keep adding in all of your data elements, just like you did in the Service Point. So a lot of these questions are going to look familiar. They're just on a new format. And just like you did in Service Point, you also want to make sure that you update it for each of the household members that are associated with the client that you enrolled. Oh, questions. Does anybody have any questions on that? I think we're good. Oh, I didn't check the chat. I'm sorry. Let me check that. Nope, we're good.
Yeah, just to reiterate, when on that enrollment screen, when you click on your program, you'll see the number of people who are enrolled. And so if you're as an entry exit shelter, you shouldn't have more people you shouldn't be going over your capacity when you enroll another person who's spending their first night there. You likely need to dismiss somebody who is left so that you're not at over your capacity.
So this is your program services. So within, within your program, you're going to be able to provide services. So when you're within a program, only the services that are available to that program you'll be able to see those on your screen. So what you want to do is when you're working with your clients, you want to go ahead and add your services in the services tab within the client shelter program. So shelters do have case management and housing referral services within this section. So services, I mean, I don't know how you want to differentiate, if either of you want to say anything more on that, but so client notes, again, are on that client level. The program notes are in the program level of your enrollment. So the programs will be available, or the program notes will be available only to those within your agency that have access to your program.
And when you look at, when you pull up a client who's been active in your program, when you look on the client level, those notes from the program level will roll up to be visible to anybody at your agency. But even though they look like they're on the client level, they're still only visible to your agency. That's been something that's been a little bit confusing to folks.
Does anybody have any questions on that? I don't know if that was a little bit.
Call reception, Callie, if you can please call reception. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. It keeps going in and out. So is a bed list like emergency shelter enrolling, basically looking at the number enrolled and verify accident date?
So you were breaking up a bit there, but I think you were asking if the number enrolled is the number who are on the bed list, and that is the case. There's not a separate bed list anymore for entry-exit shelters. If it's an entry-exit shelter, which is how your programs are currently set up, then what counts is the number who were enrolled as of that night.
So I have a question. So with a bed list, once you enter the person into the shelter, automatically entered into that bed list, or is it like our old system that you have to go to a different page and enter them into the bed?
There's actually, so there's only, for emergency shelters, there's only two ways that we manage tracking who sleeps in your beds. One way is called the entry-exit method. So that means we know who's in your beds based on the number of people that have an entry or an exit. And the other method that Clarity uses is the night-by-night method. So in that scenario, there's actually a layout of the shelter that could be provided, we could customize, and the coordinated entry team could actually reserve those beds for people. That's how they would actually refer people to your shelter. And then your team could go in and just confirm that those people are in the bed using the layout and Clarity, using the reservation system. So the two ways are the entry-exit system, which you create an enrollment, and then when they leave, you exit them. And then the other method, which none of the shelters here today that have winter shelters have this set up. We certainly can set it up for you if that's what you prefer, but that's the night-by-night method. Okay. So there is no bed list per se.
All right, so the entry exit is the best way.
Yeah, I think it's the simplest, and maybe a year from now, when everyone in your team is feeling a little more confident, it might be a little easier to lay out the reservation system, but it's likely for you. And I feel like based on last year's winter shelters, people tended to come in to your winter shelters and sort of stay for the cold months. And there wasn't a tremendous amount of entry exit activity. So the entry exit method would probably in that scenario be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Yeah.
Hi. If we have a winter shelter guest in the house, in the shelter, say for 5 days, and on the 6th day they go out, the 7th day they come back, are we exiting them out each time, or are we giving them a grace period of a day or so to see if they're coming back the next day before we take them out?
Well, that's actually a really good question. I think we should check with our CES team and what the policies and procedures are. I believe Maria, you might know better, that it's 3 nights of a grace period that's provided.
Okay,
3 nights.
so as the agency, do we have to give a grace period? Because I noticed when we give grace periods, that's when the dates are all end up being wrong. They're exited out on the wrong day, and then some individuals don't get exited out. So I think if we practice exit out when they don't show up would be the best way to do this.
I actually agree with that. Yeah, I think that's the cleanest and simplest way. And certainly, I think as you guys, as your winter shelter program is getting ramped up and full, we certainly can work with you if you wanted to consider a couple of different other ways to sort of take attendance for people each night.
For me, I think that it may be a lot of in and out, because they've come a day and they've gone a day, and we're going to be putting them in, taking them out, putting them in, taking them out.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why I think I talked about just giving a somewhat of a grace period, because they'll stay out a night and then come back the next day because they stayed at someone's house or on someone's couch for one night, and then they're right back here the next day.
Yeah. Tucker, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so this is exactly the trade-off between entry, exit, and night-by-night tracking methods that you're describing. This is 100% the reason why it's the situation where these are the reasons that you make the decision one way or another. Basically, everybody who has an exit from the entry exit program, that exit needs to be the morning after the last night they spent there. So and that's how we'll calculate how many people were in the shelter on the night before. It's people who are entered on that day and not dismissed on that day. So the day dismissed will be the first night that they were absent. So if you wait 2 or 3 days to see if they're going to come back, then you really need to backdate it to the correct morning that they left. And that's kind of the key point. So as Jocelyn was saying, if you do it on the first night they don't come back, then you know that you're getting that date correct. And sometimes it can get messed up if you do have it as if you do wait and see if they're going to come back the following night. So that's kind of the trade-off there, and that's the challenge of running it as entry exit. When you run it as night by night, where then everybody who's on the bed list needs to be marked in as present or with an attendance service recorded for that night, every single night, every single person. But people can come and go, and we know whether or not they're in the shelter based on whether or not they have that bed service marked as present for that night. So it's either doing a lot of more entry and exits with an entry exit method because people do need to get dismissed from the program promptly when they leave. And according to HUD, and I think our CES standards are the same, they need to be marked out by the time as they need to be exited if they've been gone for 3 days, and they need to have that date exited backdated to the last morning they were there, or you set it up as a night by night shelter, and then there's a lot of those attendance services or reservations to mark as present, but you're not doing as many entry and exits. So that's the trade-off, and it's one way or the other. In Service Point, it was a little bit of the worst of both worlds because folks were looking at both the bed lists every day and doing all of those entry and exits. So it's only in clarity where we only need to do kind of one or the other, but it's definitely the decision to make. And there's trade-offs both ways. It's not like one is obviously better. It depends on the situation. And we can talk about exits now, because that's actually our next topic, which is from the program screen, when you're on it, the exit button is over on the right-hand side. And as we were saying, clients have to be exited the morning after their last night. I think there might be still some cases not from the seasonal shelters that folks were checked out of bed lists, but not exited from the program. I'm not sure whether that's true or not. But then if you were set up by night, there's a potential exits report, which is clients who have been gone for 30 days, for up to 30 days. Because when you're using night by night, then clients can be away for 30 days without a bed light before you dismiss them. But because you've marked that bed night in, you'll still be backdating it to the last morning that they left. That's still true, but it's just you have that bed, because you have that bed service, you know when exactly that was. And if it's a group enrollment, you can check any or all of the group members to dismiss them. And then it'll bring up the exit screen, which has the date and the destination, and all of the disabling conditions, income, and those questions will be filled in based on, especially a seasonal shelter, it will be in what was put in for the clients at the entry, because they're not going to stay enrolled for more than 6 months, because the program isn't going to be open for that long. And the other point is just on the destinations. When people leave, you also get better information for the destination if frontline staff are the ones who are if whoever's doing the HMIS dismissals knows the clients. You're not going to get you're not going to have great information from seasonal shelters generally, but it'll be better if if staff who know the client and can ask and kind of know their general situation. If they do have a family member's couch they can sometimes crash on, or if if you know that there's an encampment that they go and stay at outside when they're not coming indoors, that sort of thing. Or if or the staff knows that they went into the hospital or something like that.
Tucker, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So now with COVID, you know how when people test positive, we're sending them out for a few days.
Yep.
Sometimes. Do we exit them and then re-enter them when they come back?
Yep.
All right.
So for an entry exit program, you're definitely exiting them and then re-entering them when they come back.
Now, can we put them beds on hold Because we know we're taking them back.
Yeah,
We don't want them to fill their beds.
yeah, Dottie, we've been talking about this with the people that are running the QI facility so we can have a little more coordination around people that are being discharged back to shelter. I believe at this point you could go ahead and hold that bed.
Okay, I just want to be sure. Thank you.
All right, are there other questions about exits? Other questions about how and when to exit, folks? This is kind of a key one, since it's how we're keeping track of everybody.
I just want to reiterate, I know all of this sounds really new and is new to everybody. Really, please don't hesitate to ask questions, because this is really the opportunity for us to understand what additional support we can give your agencies. It sounds like, based on what Adrian was talking about, that maybe we want to talk with RIHMIS about the reservation night to night method of tracking. I think that probably should be
The entry exit way will be the easiest. Easier to keep track of our data, you know, being messy. I don't know.
Yeah,
Any
we'll
other
cover, we'll show how those attendance services would be tracked coming up. But first, we'll show the census reports, which I think you'll be interested to kind of look at what has been happening in your shelters. So from that launch pad that we talked about at the beginning, and we've mentioned that there are reports. So when you click on reports, you'll get to the reports library. And there are kind of 3 sections of reports here that are going to be useful for shelters. There's the housing report, and that's replacing what were the daily bed and unit reports and the entry exit reports in Service Point, and will give you the count of persons who are checked in to your shelters by night. The HUD reports, so the HUD data quality and the ESG CAPER, those are reports. So the HUD data quality is useful to run to see what the data quality is in your programs, and the CAPER would be reports that you would run for if you're getting ESG funding, or if CHS asks you for a CAPER. Then program-based reports. So those are based on enrollments that are happening within your program. And so some of those give you details about the program and who the assigned staff are, and what's been recorded in it. And then service-based reports, those would be reports of services recorded if you've got, if you are recording if your staff are recording a lot of services, including attendance services and bed night services, if that's the case. So in the housing report, there's a few that are showing the number enrolled. So monthly housing is pre-selecting a month to choose that you want one complete month of who has been housed in the program. A weekly housing census, that'll give you a week of who's been housed in how many people have been housed in the program. And then the housing census, this is a more useful one. It will give you the number who are staying there by night over any given period that you select. And then the current housing availability, that should show the number of available beds to be filled for entry exit shelters. So that'll show you what the capacity is and how many are available. So this is what the housing census report looks like. So you select a date range and it will give you the number of clients who are enrolled as of that night. If you run it for multiple programs, you'll see each program listed in turn. And on any reports from the report library, if you click on a number, it'll give you the drill down for what those clients enrolled on that night were. So you can see if it's accurate, or you want to make sure that the numbers are accurate and see who might be there, have been still enrolled there, who shouldn't have been on that night. So that's the census, and then the current housing availability. This will run for basically the current snapshot of where things are at. It should give it'll give you what the current listed capacity is in HMIS, and then the current number that are in use. So if the capacity that is listed here is not what you actually have available, especially now with COVID, and especially now that it's a new winter census set up, a new winter capacity based on COVID you should send an email to the help desk and let us know so we can update what the current capacity is in the program. And there shouldn't be more people there shouldn't be more in use than there are available. So that's something to check for validation in case you have too many people enrolled in the program for an entry-exit shelter. Does anybody have any questions about those reports? Okay. Then there's also the program-based reports, and there's a couple of these ones that are useful for shelters that I used a lot when I was running a seasonal shelter. So General 106, the program roster, that will give everybody who's in the program with who the assigned staff is and how many services and assessments have been recorded for the client in the program, and notes that have been recorded for the client in the program. And so by default in Clarity, whoever enrolls the client will be assigned they will be assigned to that staff member in that program, but you can change it if there's a case manager who's working with the client now. And so the program roster is useful for there. The program details report, General 220, that will be an Excel download that you can use that will have all of the information about all of the clients recorded in the program for a period of time at entry and exit. So it's especially useful leading up to the point in time count to see who will be counted as chronically homeless on the night of the point in time. All right, does anybody have any questions about how to kind of review the daily census history using those reports? Okay, so we can also set up attendance services. And so attendance and reservations, this would be where, if the program decides to go for night by night, this is where that would be recorded. It's also where if you wanted to set up a service that's based on a meal sign-in or similar service, that would that's easiest to record in the attendance module, but we need to know what all of those services are to set up for you to do so. There aren't I don't believe any services of those types set up right now in your program. So those would have to be adjustments that we'd have to make. On the attendance screen, you'll get the list of attendance services that are available by your agency. And if you have reservations set up for a night-by-night shelter, there will be a little toggle over on the right-hand side of the attendance that will say reservations. So the basic attendance screen looks like this. It'll have the date that you're recording the attendance for, and then it will have the list of all of the clients in attendance. Any clients who have recently received the attendance service will be on the right-hand side, and you can use the client search to add other clients to it. If you have a badge, if you have a barcode scanner and you have client IDs, you can use a scan. You can have clients scan in to receive the service, and you just switch back and forth between manual and scanned using the toggle right here. And if your client is added an error, you can just click the trash can next to them. You can do it for different dates. You just want to be careful about which day you're selecting for recording attendance. So if you have an attendance service that you're doing data entry for a whole week, you want to make sure that you're staying on the correct day. The other point is that clients, in order to have a service recorded for the client, they need to be enrolled in the program on that day. So if you're checking people in and it's an entry and you didn't enroll them promptly, then you won't be able to record the service for them for that day. If they were enrolled the day after, you'd have to go back and edit their enrollment to be accurate for the day that they were actually in the program. And the same is true if somebody was dismissed and came back, then you need to make sure that they've been re-enrolled or that their exit date is correct so that they can receive the service on the correct day. So if the client is not enrolled, you can open a new tab to enroll them by right-clicking on the search button, and you can copy the client's name and paste it into a new search tab so that you can enroll them. But you'll have to refresh the attendance screen on the correct day in order for the client to be able to be added again. So if you were to switch to a night-by-night reservations module, then you would see that there would be reservations over on the right-hand side. And when you click on that, you'll see a grid that shows all of the beds that are set up in your center. And you'll see that you can select what bed you want to make the reservation for, and then search for the client to add. So you'll select them. It'll show you the check-in date. The reservations is like the attendance. You have to be on the correct date in order to do so. You can select the bed that you're reserving, the number of days you're going to reserve it for, and then you're going to preview and confirm the reservation. Once you do so, then they'll show up as blue on that reservation grid, and you can mark them as present or no-show. When a client you've marked as no-show, you can then reserve that bed for another client there. Every bed that has somebody in it will either be, I'll show you. So then it'll show up with a grid, and you'll see all of the reservations that have been made in your shelter. Orange are people who've been marked present. Red are people who've been marked no-show, and blue are open reservations. For past nights, every single person needs to be marked as present or no show. So that's really the part about how it's more data entry and more confirmation, is that you need to make sure that every single person is marked as present who is there, because they won't be counted as spending the night there unless they've been marked present. Does anybody have any questions about that, or want to talk more about kind of what would be involved in setting that up, if they want to set that up, or we can talk more about that now. Any questions at all about any of it? I think, are you all, I think otherwise you should all be set to go start entering everybody as entry exit, because that's how things are set up now.
I just have a question. Do we know when the winter shelter would be added to our program?
So I think it's in there. I think we just haven't, I think we marked it as inactive.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just need to turn it back to active for this season. And we do need to know if what the capacity is for this season.
45 beds.
Oh, you're muted, Jen.
Dottie, are you able to send us a help desk ticket that indicates the date your winter project started and the number of beds that you're adding?
We have a separate bin for winter shelter, and when did winter shelter start? Because I have been out of the loop.
Well, the awards were made a few weeks ago. So typically in our state, winter shelter typically begins November 1st, but I think the awards were made near November 1st. So it's whatever your organization, if your organization was funded for it and whenever you start it, that's what we would need to know.
It should have been November 1st, but we didn't. Nobody would have been added because we were on lockdown because of we had 11 positive cases. So we weren't taking anybody in on the 1st.
Okay. So how many more beds were added for your?
I'm not even sure. It's usually 20, I believe.
Okay.
Our capacity is 55. And I think we add 20 for the winter. But every year, so I need to talk to Jim about that.
Okay. Well, after you talk to Jim, So what we are interested in knowing is what we know that your regular capacity is 20, but we want to know what your COVID capacity for winter is and what day it started. That's what we would need to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll email you.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. Well, listen, everyone, thank you for coming, and I hope you have a great day and hopefully a great weekend coming up. But if you have any questions or problems at all, just send us an email to help desk, or you can also use our live chat feature. All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Take care.